Major funding for these broadcasts has been provided by grants from New York Community Bank, AmTrust Title Insurance Company, Perfect Building Maintenance, M&T Bank, Customers Bank, Marks Paneth LLP, Capital One Bank, Collins Building Services, Meridian Capital Group. Additional support has been provided by grants from AKA Hotel Residences Corman Communities, Ariel Property Advisors, Amarant Bank, Bank of America Merrill Lynch, Briarwood Organization, Chase Commercial Mortgage Lending, Chase Commercial Term Lending, Citizens Bank, Dime Community Bank, Douglaston Development Levine Builders, Flushing Bank, Friedman LLP, Handro Properties LLC, Handler Real Estate Organization, Hodges Ward Elliott INC, Investors Bank, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Institute at Syracuse University, John Casamatides Red Apple Group, Keysight Capital Partners, Matone Group, New Banks, Newmark Knight Frank, Ocean First Bank, Optimum Window Manufacturing Corp., People's United Bank, Rockefeller Group, Rosewood Realty Services, Stonehenge NYC, SVN CPEX Real Estate Services, Tierra CRG, the Marengo Family Foundation, and these friends. What's our prognosis for retail in 2020? Where do we see it? Are things going to get better? Do we need a vaccine to move forward? I don't know the answer. So today I've assembled this group of business leaders to provide their insight on the prognosis for retail in 2020. My guests include Jason Richter, who's the principal at Capricorn Retail Advisors and Capricorn Asset Management. Ron Bondi, who is the Senior Executive Vice President for Leasing at Midwood Investment and Development. James Famariello, who is the President of Meridian Retail Leasing. And last but not least, the man who's an individual in many aspects of retail, being an owner, a landlord, a tenant, and so on, John Casamatides, Chairman and CEO of the Red Apple Group. So John, since you are in so many aspects of retail, as a landlord, as a tenant, where do you see retail taking place the rest of the year and 2021?
I'm in the foxhole. You know, we own Gristedes, we own D'Agostino's, we are in the streets all the time. We've never closed. We're open since the pandemic started. We're open 7 days a week since the pandemic started. So our people are working very hard. We take their temperatures every day. We have a policy in the office where every 2 weeks it's mandatory that everybody take a COVID test. And we have a company that comes in and gives a COVID test to every employee in the office every 2 weeks, mandatory. We have the healthiest office in the city, and everybody feels good about it. Part of this, what's going on, is political, that the rest of the country has come back, and New York City, New York State is lagging behind. The country depends on New York City for almost 9% of their economy. I'm not saying that that we shouldn't be careful. We should all be careful. The pandemic still exists. We still don't understand it 100%, but we're gaining a lot of knowledge about the virus. But the city has to open up. The schools opened up partially this week. I see the traffic in the streets is getting a little bit better. Some of the people are back from Suffolk County and Westchester and Connecticut and New Jersey, but not all of them. A lot of them are staying away. How do we open up our city? And if you don't open up our city, the retail is going to be non-existent because economically it's not going to work. The restaurants are in deep doo-doo. The theater district doesn't plan to open up till late March, early, maybe late 21. So what does that mean to the restaurants? What does it mean to the actors? What does it mean to the bus boys, the waiters, the hotels, the tourism business? How many people came in just for our theater area? Well, I think New York is going to suffer big time with tourism. The hotel industry is suffering big time. And we're in deep doo-doo unless we get the right leadership. And right now, I got to tell you, we're lacking leadership. I hope on November 4th, the day after the election, where maybe politics is no longer in the swirl of things, that people become smarter in the way we run things.
Ron, you have a number of properties in the local area, also in California. How are your tenants reacting today, and how are they doing?
Well, they're all in survival mode, or at least the smaller tenants. It's really about creating a bridge from where we are today until we get back to some degree of normalcy, and it's all about capital. Being able to cover debt service, to be able to keep operations going. And, from our standpoint, we're looking at it in a few different ways. Clearly, the local tenants, the smaller, the less capitalized tenants need our help. And we're trying to create, a dynamic that will allow them to survive. And then you have the larger, more capitalized tenants that we're working with as well, but more in the realm of deferrals. Look, everybody's waiting for the light at the end of the tunnel, and as John mentioned, the restaurant business is very challenged. But the way I see it, retail is not going away. This is a point in time. It's been a very, very difficult period. But retail will come back. Retail will survive. Not all of the players that you saw 6 months ago are going to be there, but it will regenerate. There'll be new players. The same with the restaurant business. We're expecting to see as many as 100,000 restaurants close in this country before this is all over. But dining is not going away. Dining is going to come back, and there'll be new entrepreneurs that take over failed restaurants and get that business moving again.
When you bring up restaurants, James, you're a specialist in this. You're a specialist in a lot of small tenants. So how do you see the market? Have new leases been exercised over the last 6 months?
Yes, Mike. We signed about 32 leases in the last few months. I think I agree with John, by the way. I think we're in deep doo-doo for the short term, but I do see a light at the end of the tunnel, and so do a lot of the tenants that we're working with. As Ron pointed out, over 100,000 restaurants are closing, probably more like 22,000 in the tri-state area, and some of them are feeling opportunistic. I think Eater reported 60% of all restaurants will close by the end of this quarantine. And some people are feeling opportunistic, and they have PPP money and SBA money, and they want to deploy that capital, and they want to be there at renting spaces at lower rents to take care of people when the tourists come back, when the offices come back, and they will come back. I agree with Ron. I don't think retail is dead. I think people will always need to pick up their dry cleaning, to get their nails done, to go to the corner deli, to get a bite to eat at a restaurant. And the categories of businesses that are thriving during this pandemic is John's business, the grocery stores, the supermarkets, the pharmacies, and surprisingly, the liquor stores. I talked to one liquor clerk. He said sales are up 35% because people are home bored. They have nothing else to do. So why not get a bottle of wine or something, enjoy at home while you're doing nothing?
Jason, what do you see? Because you represent the variety of type of tenants, and you had mentioned to me one of your clients, I think, just signed a lease with Walgreens and so on.
So on the tenant side, to John's point, New York City is definitely behind some of the secondary and tertiary markets on a national scale. There is a tremendous amount of activity in New York for those who are seeking more opportunistic locations. James mentioned several restaurateurs that were very aggressive during this particular time with restaurants going out. So I think we're seeing a fair amount of activity for those who are a bit more aggressive and nimble. Yes, one of my clients, very close proximity to me right now, just signed a lease with Walgreens and one of our Brooklyn properties. So there's still tremendous demand for essential retailers, again, similar to John's business.
Now, this is a question for John and then anyone else, James, I think John and Ron specifically. When a tenant came to you and said, I need a deferral on rent, what did you do? Because John, you own a substantial amount of real estate around the city and around the country. What do you do with regard to tenants' requests for deferrals?
We look at it very carefully, and we look at the type of business he's in. We want to help tenants as much as we can, and we want to be sympathetic. So if they need a break, we said, yes, we will give you a break. And we do defer it and say, well, if things get better, we'd like you to pay us back someday. But if they don't get better, we're not going to go after them.
I mean, Ron, did you, on deferrals, did you add the rents a longer period of time on the leases? What did you do with regard to deferrals?
Generally not. We have a point in time when the tenant would be required to start paying us back, and we would do it over a period of 6 months or as long as a year. When we're asked to give help, whether it's an abatement or deferral, we want to see financial statements that show the tenant's bottom line, because in a lot of cases tenants get PPP money and they end up being profitable or close to being profitable. We want to see the actual conditions. We want to see balance sheets. We want to see how well capitalized they are. But in a broad brush stroke, we're generally going to help the local tenants where we really don't want the space back. And we also think that they have a viable business in the long run. That's probably the most important consideration. We look at it as an investment in their business and the long-term tenancy in our building.
Now, I noticed on your website, you were planning to open up a shopping center in Los Angeles, I think in Studio City. Did you postpone the opening? We did.
We're going to be opening up at the beginning of April. There really wasn't much of a choice at this point. Our major tenant got delayed a little bit, but we're in good shape there, and we're excited about that property. And again, the long-term prospects of that real estate are fabulous. So we're very excited, and we really think we'll open up with a lot of wind in our sails.
James, you mentioned before that you just signed 32 leases. What were the type of tenants who signed the leases, and did any of the landlords provide percentage rents as opposed to a base rent?
Most of the leases that we've signed were F&B related, fast casual, some fine dining, some ghost kitchens, some service oriented, like nail salons and dry cleaners. And yes, there was, I think majority of them for the first year, percentage rents. And that's to incentivize the tenants to sign now. A lot of people are asking for what's the new norm. There is no norm. The disparity nowadays is so great. Some are signing traditionals, very few, but most are percentage rent with a minimum base rent for the first year. And then that base rent jumps up a little bit on the second year. And then by the third year, it's a normalized rent, but there is no norm.
With regard to concessions, Jason, are landlords providing concessions and TI money with regard to retail spaces today?
100%. As James noted, we're seeing several deals happening with percentage rent for the first year and maybe even bleeding into the second year. Large in part conversions of that first year's rent into the second year's rent to capitalize the effective rent. Much more free rent for construction and just allowing any sort of variables with getting permits. contingencies regarding COVID language and whether or not they're able to open, especially for full service dining. We have several tenants that have put offers in and have gone to lease where if they're unable to open completely with 100% occupancy, there are delays in their rent commencement dates. So I think the flavor of the day is concessions in order to really cultivate activity.
All of you have been involved with health clubs and gyms. How do you see that, especially today in light of it's similar to the restaurant business. They're only limited to a certain percentage amount of people in the places. How do you see that, Ron?
Well, again, I look at it in a very similar manner to restaurants. I think COVID has made health and wellness even more top of mind to most people. And I think that gyms are going to be an important element of that moving forward for many, many years. So again, once we get through this period of time during COVID, I think that the gym business is going to be very strong. There's going to be a lot of local regional players that don't make it because they weren't capitalized well enough to get through this. But, there's some of the larger players that have tremendous, franchise equity that I think will be fine in the long run.
With regard to retail in different parts of the city, I know, Ron, you were involved with the World Trade Center. What do you see in Lower Manhattan today? I mean, I think everybody was surprised when Century 21 decided to walk away from the property. And, we have a great transit hub downtown and, the Westfield property over there. Where do you see Lower Manhattan today with regard to retail?
Well, it depends on what kind of retail you're talking about. If you're talking about essential services, grocery, drugstores, I mean, they're doing quite well. It's going to take time. It's going to take time till people feel comfortable going back and taking mass transit en masse. But I do think they'll come back. And once and clearly Lower Manhattan is, the majority of the business down there is tied to the business community. So it's going to take a while until that comes back. But I believe it will. And I believe that Lower Manhattan will continue to thrive. I think the thing that Lower Manhattan has now that it didn't have many years ago is it's become a residential community as well. So that helps to bolster the retail down there.
John, this is a question for you. Over your career, you've always tried to seize the opportunity in different areas. What area would you say is an opportunity in retail besides the grocery and the essential services? What other types of retail would you do, especially since right now you have the Coney Island project and you're looking for retailers over there and you have the properties in downtown Brooklyn? What type of tenants are you looking for and what type of tenants have been coming to you recently?
Well, like I said, I'm very much concerned about New York in particular. I think because of these Zoom meetings, are going to continue, and you're going to have people further apart, not traveling as much. You're going to have people taking weekends off. We're looking for healthcare. We're talking to a lot of hospitals because healthcare and hospitals is not going to go out of business. I think it's going to be a growing business. We think the garage business is going to go away. People rather take Ubers sometimes and drive during the day. I'm very much concerned about our city and the subway system and the buses. People sometimes don't want to be that close together. I'm concerned about the crime in the city, if we're talking about New York City. I think a lot of it is political. And whether it's our city or state or our country, I'm concerned about politics because we don't want our country to turn into New York City politically wise. I'm concerned about the safety. Look, I was a Bill Clinton Democrat. It's not about being a Democrat or Republican. It's about safety in our streets and safety that we don't use rioters to make our laws. We gotta follow the rule of law.
Okay, with regard to maybe Jason, Ron, or James on this safety that John brings out, have many of your tenants and clients been instituting their own safety, bringing with regard to security guards for properties over there? Have you seen that?
I mean, I know Saks Fifth Avenue had hired their own security force to guard the windows, but that was mostly during the riots and looting. But I agree with John. I think if there is no safety, there is no value in real estate. I don't think that looting and protesting should be used as a political tool. But I think that this is just the political environment that we're in right now. It's really unfortunate. Hopefully everybody gets out to the polls November 3rd and we start changing this little by little.
Security is definitely a major concern for our clients, our tenants. We've moved away from certain neighborhoods based on security concerns. I think more specifically in Manhattan than the outer boroughs and the neighborhoods today, or at least over the last few months. They haven't implemented their own security per se, but definitely top of mind, especially for those who keep a fair amount of inventory in their stores.
With regard to security, because
I want to talk. Can I talk? Am I on?
yeah,
It's about security, and it's about look. It's not about Democrats and Republicans. I was a Democrat. I am a Republican, but it's the saying I support common sense Democrats. But my problem is that the common sense Democrats don't have the courage to go against the crazy Democrats. That's my concern about our country, Washington, and our city. That common sense Democrats, and there are a lot of them, but they need courage to say enough is enough.
New York, we know will rebound, but we're not sure when it's going to rebound. So I might as well sit back and wait. Are you seeing that, or people holding back?
Huge impact. Huge impact. Every time we get closer and closer to signing a series of leases, then there's another riot, and then all of a sudden the person is not returning their phone calls or emails, or they call us and tell us, hey, maybe now is not the time. Maybe we should wait a year. And it's really bad because the lease with a vacant space, the landlord doesn't get to pay his taxes or mortgage. The tenant doesn't get to hire people to earn wages, and it goes on and on and on. So they're sucking so much money out of the economy by every political move like this, and they don't realize the damage they're causing.
Michael, one more thing. We have $1 billion worth of projects in New York City, building new buildings that, in theory, are on hold, depending what happens in Washington on November. Number two, I'm very, very much concerned. AOC made an announcement last night, a couple of days ago, that she plans to take over the city council. So how are we going to spend $1 billion in New York City if you have AOC in charge of the city council?
I mean, all of this has political ramifications coupled with the other ramifications of having an effect on our business, okay? Because unless you have some safety, you have stable government, we're going to have a certain disconnect in the future. So I think in summation, as I would say with my crystal apple, it's a little dull right now. It may take a little while longer than we expected for the world to get better, but hopefully, 2021, we'll have a vaccine, we'll have a stable government, we'll be in a better shape. And I'd like to thank Jason, Ron, James, and John, and I'll see you next week.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you so much, Michael.
Thank you, Mike.